Apparently we look normal.
Well, that's, I suppose, a step up, isn't it, really?
Huge compliment. Considering we looked as if we were in some sort of a brothel there. The lights were so red for a while. But anyway.
It's a while since we did those stories.
I know, yeah. So Vincent Collopy, free from prison, back to the bosom of his family in Limerick. We're going to go over a little bit of his life and times and crimes. And the Collopy gang, where are they at the moment?
Well, we got, I suppose, an insight into it recently when his brother Ray Colopy there was a Criminal Justice Bureau case against him. So there was a big fat affidavit came out kind of describing all the background and, what the various brothers and, being, and describing them as actually as an organised crime gang in their own right. They were often referred to as the Keane Colopy faction that were kind of opposed to the McCarthy-Dundons during the long feud in Limerick. But they were very much kind of seen at the same time as being kind of set apart. And the guards have been dealing with them since the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And
so where are they based in Limerick?
They're the Island Field.
Yeah.
Again, where the Keanes would have originally kind of started out as well. Although they kind of seem to have moved a lot to Garryowen, different part of the city.
For anyone who doesn't know the Island Field, and I've been driven on and off it a few times, it is very weird. Do you know a little bit of the history of it?
Well, I think it wasn't originally built kind of with the idea that it was going to be used for military or something. Yeah. And then it was because of there was serious housing crisis in Limerick at the time.
Yeah.
Nothing changes, as you. And so it was used then to house people who needed it. And so there was a lot of families there.
There's one little narrow road onto it and one little narrow road off it. So it's a bit of a nightmare to police.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not an island, but I mean, it's surrounded kind of by water on three sides.
Yeah.
Of the River Shannon. So it's always, I suppose it's an enclave in a sense in that way. So it certainly could have had the potential to foster a tight community spirit.
For sure. And while there's plenty of families with no involvement in crime living there and have been over the years, the Collopy and the Keane families groupings were, significant and still are.
Yeah, and I suppose it wouldn't help their activities, which have been pretty extensive, over the last 25 plus years, given, I suppose, the Island Field a certain name, certainly among crime journalists. But there is plenty of people who've come from that part of the world who have, normal lives and successful lives as well.
Is Vincent the oldest of the brothers?
No, Raymond is actually the oldest, also known as Jethro.
Jethro.
Yeah, and so he was actually acquitted last year of... it was money laundering offences. There was something like 33,000 found in a sock in his house, so he was charged with that. But they were acquitted by a jury on that. And then the Criminal Justice Bureau then went to have it declared the proceeds of crime. He didn't challenge that. So
right.
I mean, and that at the time we did the story, it turns out then it was going through Raymond's kind of background, and that. While he was heading around to different parts of Europe and Spain and Bulgaria and all the rest and setting up drug deals, he actually got 250,000 in social welfare, at the time. We did speak about this before on Crime World, I think back in March. But it just, he was still up until last October getting his dole money, even though, there was 30 grand, 33 grand in a sock in the house. And
so how many of the Collopys still live on this Island Field?
Well, the address is given. I think Brian is in Fedamore. He's 53. Raymond's 56 at the moment. He's in a slightly different area. And there would have been a house, I think, outside the Island Field that was targeted one time by the Criminal Justice Bureau quite some time ago now.
Yeah.
He has 39 previous convictions and lots of various things. I suppose the most significant were, and there were some of the other brothers who were jailed on this as well, with threats to Willie Moran in 2010. He would have been an associate, and there was threats to kill him because they decided, or it was believed by them, that he owed money to their brother Philip, who was shot dead in 2009 while he was showing off with a Glock.
He shot himself dead, basically.
He shot himself dead, yeah.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal story, really, like something from a movie.
Yeah. And he was actually, wasn't he going to be, Philip Colopy was going to be a star witness in the trial against one of the Dundons, that he had told him, he'd actually looked for permission to shoot Johnny Pitchfork McNamara.
Right.
And then, of course, they shot the wrong guy.
So he was at a sort of a cocaine-fueled party, wasn't he? And he took out the gun to show off and went to shoot it up into the ceiling, but missed the ceiling and hit his
No,
own head.
I think as far as I remember, there was a witness statement along the lines of somebody said, "Oh, be careful with that," and he says, "Don't worry, it's empty," and went to demonstrate it was empty, and managed to fortunately shoot himself
In front of everybody at the party.
Whoever was there, I'm
Yeah.
sort of witnessed it. It was described there was a lot of blood. I'm sure it wasn't pleasant.
No, absolutely not. So I suppose go back to the history of the Collopys, how they sort of emerged into becoming players on the organised crime stage, and why they linked up with the Keens at that point, which would have been really the end of the end of the 90s, was it?
Yeah, well, like like we do know, it was really, I suppose it was the early 90s. They kind of came to prominence, as it was put in criminal terms, when their father, Jack Collopy, was assaulted outside his house by a couple of people, and one of them was a guy called Patrick Bull Eyes McCarthy, who I think he believed that I think there was money owed to him as well. And so when Jack was beaten up, they took it on themselves to actively engage in a feud, as it was put in the affidavit evidence.
Yeah.
And so the feud began, and that was a relatively small feud, but it emerged then with other criminal disputes that were going on, and that eventually kind of, you can argue that was the kind of the beginning of the feuds and disputes. And
yeah, because I haven't heard that one. I mean, we always hear about the murder in the Moose Bar being the start.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a direct, that would have been all part of it, because it was, it was very much, I suppose, the Ryans would have been on the opposing side with the Collopy, so it was very much between them. And so there was a lot of back and forth in the years, like, around that time. And then when you got to the Moose Bar shooting, then that's, I suppose, that was the first, headline grabbing, and it was an arresting kind of moment, all right.
And that was Eddie Ryan. His sons, of course, were then supposedly kidnapped, and I think Ciarán Keane agreed to go to meet them because after the murder of Eddie Ryan, he feared that maybe associates of Ryan would come back to get him and wanted to sort of take them out before they could touch him. But of course, this was this famous double cross. Right in the middle of that were the Dundon brothers, who had set it up. And instead of meeting the Ryan brothers, Ciarán Keane met with his death on the roadside. And his nephew, Owen Tracy, was stabbed an enormous amount of times. Amazing, he survived. Of course, Desi Dundon and others were jailed for life in relation to that. And that was really the big kick-off of what became just war on the streets of Limerick.
Yeah, it was very much, I suppose, wasn't it, the Dundons trying to, force their way into it, which I suppose they did successfully for
their arrival
years.
from England, I suppose, gave the McCarthys that backup they needed, that sort of strength they needed to sort of take control of the city. And there was a lot of personal disputes as well, of course. I mean, these days, Vincent Collopy, so he's just out of jail having served, was it, he certainly got a 4.5-year sentence for cocaine dealing.
Yeah, so he finished that sentence. He got out just last week. And he got it was 6 years with 18 months suspended.
Right.
And he pleaded guilty to possessing 10,500 euro worth of cocaine. And he was seen by guards kind of throwing this out of a car. There was a bit of a pursuit. But there was another man then, there was a follow-up searches, and there was a guy with him, and he pleaded guilty, he was convicted of possession of 1.4 million worth of cocaine, heroin and other tablets. And I think there was cash as well. So
were they both in the same car? And
yeah.
So how did they divide up the
responsibility?
Yeah.
I suppose, if someone puts their hand up, I mean, and the other person denies it, there's not a lot that can be done unless there's fingerprints or some other kind of corroborative evidence to show that may not be true.
So,
and it's actually, it's a bit of a pattern with some of the Collopy brothers over the years, that they've been with people who've unfortunately then been caught for possessing large amounts of money or large amounts of drugs.
Did you mention there that the Criminal Assets Bureau affidavit describes them as the Collopy Organised Crime Group?
Yeah, as a standalone.
Standalone
in their
group.
Own right, yeah.
Has any of that sort of gangland legislation been levelled against any of those Collopys or Keens as regards directing a criminal organisation? Sometimes we see that. We have the likes of Patrick Keating, Barry Young in jail, having pleaded guilty to directing a criminal organisation. But there's loads of other sort of charges around that. But they've never really brought them as separate entities to court.
No, and I mean, and you can see from, I suppose, in the past, they've been kind of caught with this kind of, I suppose, on the street policing. Like, there was, I think it was Brian and Kieran both got an 8-year sentence. They both got out from that in 2021. They were caught red-handed in 2015. They were getting heroin ready for sale in a house, and they managed to flush some of it down. But I mean, they were caught red-handed, and they got their 8 years. And they also had served time, like I think a 5-year sentence for the threats to kill Willie Moran as well. And then there was others, the likes of Jonathan, who's 38. He's 14 previous, 3 outside of this country as well. And there was an operation Clean Streets, where undercover guards over a period of a couple of months. So even though he has 13 convictions, about 4 or 5 of them would have been from that one operation. And Vincent would have been caught. He's 46 now, so he would have been caught then as well, selling to undercover cops, and that's going back to 2004, 2005. But I mean, if you go through some of the stuff, I think I added up before, but like it adds up to a considerable amount of drugs and money that have been taken from associates and people linked to the Collopy Organised Crime Gang over the years. So it's not from lack of trying from the guards. I don't think that kind of anti-gangland legislation has been used against them. It hasn't been used against very many people, has it?
Well, maybe not.
There was one in Galway, I think, when Loughlin Brothers was charged with it and directing. You hear about it, but I think in the special crim, there's been 1 or 2 charges as well. I'd have to look.
There's certainly those 2 that jump out at me: Peadar Keating and Barry Young, and both pleaded on them. So we didn't hear evidence as regards what the case was as such against them. But in Limerick, it's just the same names over and over again, isn't it? I mean, what you had was the feud in Limerick, the takedown really of the gangs. The Dundons have been, 3 of the Dundon brothers are serving life sentences for murder. You had what was believed to be the sort of the end of it all, and things went quiet. And there was a huge amount of money pumped in, state funds pumped into Limerick to sort of dismantle some of the houses that were down there to give more greenery space around it. There was money pumped into community projects and all the rest of it, quite rightly so. But still these names are coming back again and again. They're like multi-generational and decades in the business of crime. Yeah, I mean,
you're looking at Raymond, 56, and I suppose, the youngest, Damien's 35. And again, he's 18 previous. He did 5 years as well over the Willie Moran threats as well. So I mean, he's 35 now, but I mean, he was a very young guy when the violence was kicking off, and they've all been associated, with various incidents and things that have happened. Some of the brothers, at one point there was a fight in the visitors area of the prison. There was, of course, the fight at Supermax, the rival gang. There was, I think, some of them were jailed over that as well. And of course, then you have Kenneth Collopy, who he's the son of Brian. He's doing life for. He shot dead a guy called Daniel Fitzgerald, I think, who was unrelated to crime. He shot him in 2009, so he's in prison at the minute. And then you had Kieran has a son, Tony Collopy. He got a 2.5-year sentence for a taser assault, and he kicked a guy in the head. Some kind of personal row as well.
The Keane grouping sort of emerged into a much more sophisticated operation after things went quiet. When they kind of come back on our radar, they're running a really slick money laundering operation, and they're probably laundering for other groupings. The Collopys, is there any sort of an element of, have they developed into a more sophisticated operation? Do the brothers work together? They clearly have one another's backs, I imagine, but how big is this organised crime group nowadays?
I mean, well, some of the, if you're looking at the 1.4 million, they're not small, and I mean, they are being supplied by, they're being supplied from Dublin, and, that's come up repeatedly, various people in the Clondalkin area, for instance. And then, of course, there's links abroad as well in Spain. Vincent picked up 2 convictions in Bulgaria where he was caught with a big stash of Xanax, and he was kind of on the run in 2012, I think it was, from the threats and intimidation against Willie Moran as well. So he was he was caught there as well. So I mean, they have connections in.
They seem to be caught with their own stashes quite a lot, though, with their own money. They don't, they don't.
Or someone else seems to be caught with their, when they happen to be in the same car, or they're seen with them. I mean, like there's just. It's just a constant kind of a game, I suppose, or not a game, but it's a constant business. For certainly members of the family, they seem to be just at it full time.
And what about wealth and their spend and all the rest of it? Have they, those houses initially where they were living on the island field were social housing, I imagine. Have they bought up anything significant?
Well, there was. I know there was at the council did take back 2 houses that were being used by the Collopys at one point as kind of dealing
stash houses,
and that kind of thing, but they never actually owned them. But they were, I think, initially, I suppose, given to them by the council, or they had some kind of claim on them. But that was reversed or whatever by the council. But like in terms of there haven't been any major Criminal Assets Bureau cases against them. It's quite possible they've been clever enough in that their assets are outside of this jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like there isn't necessarily a big mansion that you can point to and say
a big prize.
That's where someone lives, or
And what about the sort of the tensions down in Limerick? Is Vincent Collopy's return expected to cause any ripple effects into the old tensions, or?
Any of the kind of the violence in recent times seems to be more of a personal nature. Like there's been people allegedly driven off the road and this sort of thing, but nobody's coming forward to give a statement to the guards or go to witness, things like that. But I think they're kind of like, in a way, they won the feud in a sense. The 2 Ryans are both dead. They're business is still going well. The economy is going well. There's plenty of drugs being used every weekend by people, and there's somebody always willing to step into the market and
they're dealing everything, as you say. You've linked him to Xanax. You've linked him to heroin, cocaine. It's pretty much,
I think it's the full smorgasbord,
the full supermarket. Yeah.
Seems to be. And this is a gang with international connections that has, literally hands-on street dealing. And it's a pattern that you do see with some other kind of clan-based gangs. I mean, aren't the Albanians famous for that in London, that they kind of wiped out the middlemen? And it's actually a much more profitable way of doing things. It's you control. Maybe not. They don't exactly, or they might have for all we know, but they probably don't have their own field somewhere in Colombia with their own labs.
Yeah.
And, but at whatever point that they're into the drugs market, they control every bit of it. Then from the point where they're getting their, I suppose, their mother lode into their hands.
To literally the street dealing. Okay, well, I'm sure you're going to be writing about Vincent Collopy again soon. So thanks for that, Eamon.
Always a pleasure, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.